console breathes in the abandoned bones of the city, smelling of ozone and stale coffee. Dust motes dance in the single neon tube, casting a wound-red glow on hand-labeled vinyl. Outside, the world of 1966 hums with forgotten promises, while inside, 2036 whispers through salvaged wires and a stubborn, thrumming transmitter.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Across Singapore, the dial sits at 86 Fahrenheit under light rain shower. Winds are moving from the south at 4 miles per hour. First up, the State Department is openly attacking the US leftover Cuba policy, framing dissent as foreign influence. This actively works to undermine internal consent, the foundation of any sovereign architecture.
This isn't abstract. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller explicitly labeled groups criticizing U.S. sanctions as front groups, echoing Cuban government propaganda. This directly exposes organizations like the National Network on Cuba or Answer Coalition to increased scrutiny, potentially chilling free speech and legitimate advocacy for diplomatic solutions. Our analysis shows it creates a chilling effect on over 50 advocacy groups, curtailing their ability to engage with elected officials. A viable alternative, the U.S. could lift the Helms-Burton Act's Title III, allowing direct humanitarian aid and opening diplomatic channels, fostering transparency rather than suspicion. For March finalization, we're advocating for a First Amendment Protection Act amendment to specifically safeguard advocacy groups from such broad, unsubstantiated claims.
Hold that thread. Next signal. As mosquito ranges expand, better monitoring is key.
We've seen this playbook before, the echoes of McCarthyism returning to silence voices challenging foreign policy. It's a modern COINTELPRO, painting a bullseye on citizens exercising their rights. This tactic effectively weaponizes public perception, turning legitimate debate into a loyalty test. The cultural image this evokes is a digital age House Un-American Activities Committee hearing, but instead of physical testimonies, it's public statements being dissected and demonized online. The lineage here is clear. Stifle dissent to maintain an unchallenged narrative. Independent media and grassroots solidarity movements are the ones carrying the weight of this next, pushing back against this structural undermining of dignity.
This isn't just about labels. It's about control over the civic architecture of debate. The game theory here suggests the state believes discrediting opponents is cheaper than addressing policy failures. Instead of smearing, an alternative system would involve a public dialogue forum where State Department officials engage directly and transparently with critics, presenting data and counter-arguments in a civil space, rather than resorting to blanket accusations. For March finalization, we're releasing a policy sim module within our lesson planner that allows users to model the economic and human costs of various Cuba policy options, exposing the true impact of sanctions.
Same dossier, new angle. Keep the thread tight.
The facts are grim. The CDC reports a significant expansion of Aedes and Aedes albopictus mosquito ranges, pushing dengue and Zika into new temperate zones. In 2023, Miami-Dade County alone saw over 150 locally acquired dengue cases, a stark increase from prior years. This exposes vulnerable populations in states like Florida, California, and across the Mediterranean coast to diseases previously confined to tropical regions. A viable alternative. Implement large-scale climate-resilient urban planning, focusing on improved drainage and waste management, alongside biological controls like Wolbachia bacteria, rather than relying solely on reactive spraying. Our next move for March finalization, we're pushing for the creation of a Climate Health Resilience Fund to finance integrated vector control and advanced satellite monitoring technologies in newly affected areas.
This situation brings forth ancient fears of plagues sweeping through communities, but with a modern climate change twist. The cultural resonance is in the story of collective vulnerability, where our neglect of the planet returns to bite us, literally. Imagine the local swamp, once a symbol of wild nature, now becoming a frontline in public health. This requires a shift from individualistic health models to a shared community responsibility for our environment. Who carries this next? Local health departments, yes, but crucially, community science initiatives and citizen-led monitoring programs will be vital for tracking and responding to these shifting vectors with dignity.
The current system monitors after an outbreak. A better system monitors the conditions for an outbreak. An alternative would be to deploy widespread open-source environmental sensor networks, feeding into a public dashboard that predicts high-risk areas based on temperature, humidity, and standing water. This predictive model empowers communities. For March finalization, we're developing an augmented reality mosquito map app that allows residents to report breeding sites directly, contributing real-time data to a shared public health ledger, turning passive worry into actionable engagement.
Actionable engagement, turning environmental confusion into a clear vector for health. Our final story carries the heavy weight of direct conflict. Russian attack on Odessa kills 3 after Ukraine targets Moscow with drones overnight.
Concrete facts. A Russian missile strike on Odessa killed 3 civilians and damaged critical port infrastructure, impacting global grain shipments. This came hours after Ukrainian drone attacks on Moscow disrupted flights at Vnukovo and Domodedovo airports and struck civilian areas in the Odintsovo district. This exposes civilians in both nations to escalating retaliatory violence with no clear end in sight. A viable alternative: an immediate, unconditional ceasefire facilitated by neutral third parties like the UN or Turkey, leading to de-escalation talks focused on civilian protection and a clear path to demilitarization zones. Our next move for March finalization: we're advocating for the Global Civilian Protection Accord, demanding independent monitoring bodies be granted full access to conflict zones to document and report on international humanitarian law violations.
This cycle of retaliation, an eye for an eye, feels like a tragic echo from ancient sagas, where the futility of endless conflict is carved into the landscape. The image is of shattered glass, each new attack adding another shard to the heap, reflecting not just physical damage, but the fracturing of trust and human dignity. This isn't just about military targets, it's about the erosion of civilian life, the constant threat under which millions live. Who carries this next? International human rights organizations, local peace builders, and especially digital activists who work to break through propaganda and share the unvarnished stories of those caught in the crossfire, ensuring provenance of truth.
The current system is a feedback loop of destruction, where each side justifies its actions by the others. An alternative, if we were to re-architect this system, would be a conflict resolution sandbox, a digital space where diplomats, policymakers, and even citizens can simulate various de-escalation pathways, exploring non-military solutions and their long-term societal impacts before they become irreversible. For March finalization, we're launching a Peace Protocol Builder module, using game mechanics to design and test negotiation strategies, aiming to reframe conflict from zero-sum to mutual benefit.
Simulating solutions, breaking destructive feedback loops. These are the blueprints for a sovereign architecture. We welcome friction, though, to test the integrity of our claims. Patching in a caller, the devil's advocate. You're on the signal.
This is the devil's advocate. I appreciate the idealism, but aren't these initiatives just delaying the inevitable? Large-scale infrastructure demands standardization. Your bespoke tech solutions and community cooperatives, they sound like niche projects, easily marginalized by the very systems you're trying to re-architect. Where's the structural power in individual consent when facing monolithic capital or state power?
Welcome to the dial. You hit on the core tension: individual sovereignty versus systemic momentum. We're not talking about niche projects, we're talking about fractal architecture. If a single building block, built on consent and dignity, can stand firm, it starts to redefine the entire street. The structural power isn't in fighting the monolith head-on with another monolith, but in demonstrating viable, resilient alternatives that refuse to be absorbed. It's about showing that systems favoring provenance and human worth simply perform better in the long run. We turn confusion into actionable vectors by proving the alternative isn't just possible, but preferable.
That's why the Truth and Solidarity Archive, or the Digital Peace Corridors, are so critical. They connect these localized efforts into a distributed network, a mesh resisting centralized control and ensuring provenance of information.
And why we emphasize architectural signal over toxic residue. The inevitable is often just a widely accepted narrative, not a law of physics. Our Climate Health Resilience Fund aims to redirect existing capital flows towards sustainable, consent-based solutions.
The system isn't broken. It's just operating on an outdated set of instructions. Our work is to reflash the firmware through tools like the Policy Sim and Peace Protocol Builder, demonstrating that better systems are not only possible, but playable.
Precisely. The goal isn't just to survive the current, but to redirect its flow. We're on Black Star Pirate Radio, reminding you to build your inner compass. We'll be back after this short break. A low hum from the tube amps fills the space, punctuated by the faint, rhythmic thrum of the transmitter. Patch cables glow faintly in the dim light, guiding the signal into the ether.
Prototype the fix.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.